Okay. Hi, Bill. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to see you again. And so it's been a long time.
Well, it's great seeing you again, and thank you for inviting me on the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. And it's a pleasure having you. Yeah. So we want to talk about some of your, the films that you've directed and also your background. I didn't know that you were the person who actually made the first Michael Myers mask.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of my first film crimes. And of course, I did a lot of others later. But yeah, I worked for a company called Don Post Studios, which was a mask making company. And
Mm,
it's like, I was just trying to find a gig doing anything. And I wound up sculpting a lot of stuff for Don Post and ultimately wound up sculpting the Captain Kirk mask that
mm.
ultimately became Michael Myers. In
No,
fact, I remember when they came in and the film production guys came in and said, "Can you paint one of these white and spray paint the hair black? The hair is actually black. I
mhm.
know everybody puts the blonde hair on it, but the reason is we sprayed it with black lacquer, which if
No.
you watch the beginning of the movie, his hair is
Mm.
black. By
Yeah.
the end of the movie, it's blonde because all the lacquer fell out. It wasn't a good way of doing it, but it was quick.
Oh, interesting. Wow, that's incredible. Wow. Because but you also had a tremendous amount of Hollywood memorabilia that you've collected over the years, because you also had the original Robbie the Robot. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was a big fan of the movie Forbidden Planet, and I think what started me collecting on it was, um, I mean, I loved it when I was a kid, but when I heard about the MGM auction, which was 1970,
Mm.
and so I was like, what was I, like 22 or 23 or something, and they uh, and I just started thinking, well, what did they make that'd be cool to have? And I remembered Forbidden Planet, and so I went to the auction, and of course they had a lot of stuff which I couldn't afford.
Mm.
But yeah, it sort of put me on the path. And a guy named Bob Short and I both worked at Downpost Studios. Now, Bob, you might know from he won the Academy Award for, I think it was for E.T. He like did the
Yeah.
heart thing
Mm.
for E.T. and he also did the tail for Splash.
Hmm.
Anyway, we wound up starting at Downpost Studios on the first day.
Really.
We were both there. That was our first day, and we were painting 300 line Frankensteins. So, but anyway, the point of all this was um, I became friends with one of the guys over at MGM, and he invited us over. This is long after the auction. This is probably in the mid 70s, and we were actually down post. We were going to shoot a little promo for an idea we had for a Saturday morning kids show, and I called up my friend at MGM and I said, "Can I? Do you have any like sci-fi props?"
Mm.
And we went over there, and I remember we went to this old wooden building in the back lot, and it was like a two-story building and rickety old stairs. And we went up there, and he opened the wood doors, and I looked in, and my mouth must have gone down to the floor because there were most of the props from Forbidden Planet just sitting there.
Mhm.
And so uh, I said, "What can I buy from?" He said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "I'll take the room." Well, that would be about 350. I went, 350, man, 350,000. I don't have that kind of money. No, $350.
Oh, God.
So I remember going home at night and I was like terrified that the studio had burned down or something in the middle of the night. So the next day, Bob and I we rented a big 20-foot flatbed and we drove over there. And the only thing that was weird is we could put anything we wanted on the truck,
Mhm.
but we had to have their guys put it on the truck
No.
because it was a union thing.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, but yeah, I mean, the guy, Jimmy McLennan was the guy he was the head of the construction department by that time and had worked on Forbidden Planet.
Mhm.
And um, he took very kindly to the notion that we wanted to save this stuff because his feeling was that it was all just going to get bulldozed, which they had already bulldozed a bunch of stuff. So he said, "Yeah, just load up whatever you want." And he gave us a pass, and I think it was like 2 or 3 days we went there, and we could go any place in the studio and look for props.
Mm.
And we found stuff like up in rafters and stuff like that, and it was pretty amazing. So yeah, at one point I think I owned probably 99% of the stuff that was left on Forbidden Planet. And of
Oh,
course, over the my original plan was to have a big room and be able to display all of it, have some of the stuff set up, and of course, I was never able to do that. So slowly, I sort of got rid of stuff over the years. I still have quite a lot of stuff, though.
wow. I don't know if you heard what happened was apparently somebody found at MGM an area that they had just like, forgotten about.
Yeah.
And they went in there and there were all the backdrops from Forbidden Planet,
Oh
the
yeah.
backdrop of Out There 4 and all that stuff.
Yeah. 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 No, that's I'm hoping they preserved it.
Yeah, they did actually. And it was all in really beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
also,
the props that we saw were like it had been this room, and some of the stuff like the combination lock to the Krell door and stuff looked like it had been parked there in 1956 and never touched again.
my
I mean,
God.
it had this much dust on it, and it was pretty amazing. So, yeah. And Bob Short was a collector on, probably still is, on Man from Uncle. So, sometimes they'd use Forbidden Planet props, and Man from Uncle, I go, no, that's a Forbidden Planet prop. Give me that.
But yeah, they also somebody found one of the paintings, the painting that showed the graves of the people from the Bellerophon.
Oh, right. That the what's his name who painted that? I can't think of his name right off the top of my head.
Mm.
But yeah,
But
it's amazing.
that's amazing. Yeah, because I remember that because my dad used to work for MGM at one time.
Oh, did he? What did he do?
Yeah, he was in publicity there at the studio.
Oh,
It was funny
well, then
because
maybe you can tell me what happened. Why aren't there any behind the scenes shots of Forbidden Planet?
good question. I don't know. Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah.
Because they certainly would have taken them,
Yeah, exactly.
but
Yeah.
not a single one has ever shown up.
But what's crazy about MGM is that the studio was such this enormous sort of island in the middle of, Culver City that we went there shortly after they finished the production of Goodbye, Mr. Chips with Peter O'Toole. And he had to visit somebody, and we looked at an edit of some of the best there at the studio. And then afterwards, we thought, oh, we'll go and grab something at the commissary. And the lady at the commissary says to my dad, "Oh, I haven't seen you around in a while. Have you been on vacation?" He says, I worked for about 35 years. It's been a long vacation.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was just forgotten about. Jimmy McLennan, at one point, I was talking about Robbie the Robot and
Mm.
blueprints and stuff like that. And he said, well, let's go take a little walk. So we walked to one of the sound stages, which was some distance away. And he took me up, they always have stairs that go up into like the rafters. And he
Mm.
took me upstairs in the rafters, and behind one of the like, you know, uh, studs, which were giant. There was a stack of blueprints stuffed in there, that was like this thick, and
Mm.
it was all blueprints from Forbidden Planet. How he remembered that, unless maybe he put them there all those years ago, and um, and that's where I found the sort of the alternate Robbie designs were in
Wow.
there.
Interesting.
So stuff was probably put in there back in the day.
Interesting, really. Because it's also interesting too that so many studios sometimes when they needed bigger sound stages, they would come to MGM to shoot. And I remember during that visit, we visited a soundstage, and I saw immediately the space capsule from Marooned was there, and also the Russian space capsule that they used for the film, because they still had Iron Man 1 written on the
Oh
side of
yeah.
the ship and everything. Yeah.
I visited the studio about the time I was collecting this stuff. they were making Logan's Run,
Mm.
and uh, and I was talking to Jimmy about Robbie the robot. He says, "Well, let's go over here. These guys are building a robot over here." And so I talked to the effects guy. Said, "Oh yeah, this is much better than Robbie the robot." And I'm going, "I don't think so." And they showed me what they were doing. And in my head, I'm going, "This is awful."
Yeah, no, I remember it. It was like, oh, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
But you did a job one time or a project one time together with H.R. Geiger, was it?
yeah. Giger and I actually became good friends, and I actually did two different projects with him. One was the Mirror,
Mm,
which interestingly, I just put up the lookbook on my YouTube page,
hmm.
uh, and and I also had a project called Dead Star, which became Supernova.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
and they were both H.R. Giger projects, and I went to Switzerland and hung out with him for a while in his apartment and stuff. And
Mm.
I have to say, it was no surprise that to me that he passed on fairly early because of his lifestyle. I mean, he worked in this little dark room with an airbrush with no ventilation,
Oh, no.
you know, and it's just like I'm going, don't do that.
Because I remember I was doing a gig over at a company called Starfax in
Oh
North,
yeah.
and I was actually the project was for you and another gentleman, and we were doing a whole collection of H.R. Giger drawings. And it was funny because I had previously in the building next door, I was working on the infamous film The Tormentors. And I remember you saying to the person saying, "Now be easy on Blake. He had to watch The Tormentors yesterday."
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. But I wanted to get on to your first film that you directed was Fear.com. And it's actually a really super interesting story, actually.
Well, no, the first film I directed was Scared to Death.
Oh, Scared to Death, excuse me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Hmm.
That was I started it in 1980 and finished it in 1981.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was interested in that. And I noticed that then you did the House on Haunted Hill as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
really an
Well,
excellent.
I made Scared to Death. Then the next film I did was a film called Creature, which was sort of a alien ripoff movie. And
Hmm.
uh, then after that, I did a bunch of TV stuff, including Tales from the Crypt. And then I did House on Haunted Hill, and then
Yeah.
Fear.com, and
Hmm.
then Insomnia.
Mm. Yeah, because I like your version of A House on Haunted Hill because it really does capture more of the feeling because the William Castle version, they called him the P.T. Barnum of horror movies, and so it was a little too contrived on it. Yours was really more kind of I felt true to it. Mhm.
Well, Dick Beebe, who wrote my first Crypt episode, and I worked on it, and he wrote the first draft,
Mhm.
and it was awful. And the reason it was awful, I think, is he had a little bit of a problem with tip in
Oh.
the tubes,
Mm.
and uh, and I think he wrote the entire script probably in the night before he had to deliver it. So the studio was going to cancel it actually, and I talked to him. I said, "Well, listen, give us a couple weeks. Let me come back to you with a spin."
Mm.
And so I got Dick and I said, look, let's go back and look at the original movie and write down everything we like about it, and
Yeah.
then write down whatever we think it needs,
Hmm.
and which is what we did. And as a kid, I remembered I was like 12 years old when that came out, but I remember being disappointed that there were no real ghosts in it. So I said,
Hmm.
so this time let's have real ghosts, that we think it's one thing, but it's really something else. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And a little bit of background on it too is uh, now when they brought me on originally, they kept pitching me on doing it like my Crypt episode, which was only skin deep. And if you've seen it, it's very dark, very creepy, and and sort of erotic in a way. And So that was the approach. And then about 2 weeks before production was to start, I start getting script pages from um, the writers of Friends.
Hmm.
And what movie are we making here? And it became very clear to me that what the studio wanted was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Oh no.
So, so I said, okay, I wasn't going to fight that. I said, let me see what I can do with it. So I tried to
Hmm.
make the scary stuff scary and the funny stuff funny. So that was my approach
It
to
was
it.
a nice balance through the whole thing. It worked. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because nowadays with sometimes with horror movies, they try to be too graphic with it, and you kind of have a good balance with it on it, which is what I really like. Yeah.
Oh, good, good,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, and a lot of people, who don't believe in ghosts, I do because I lived in a haunted house, in a real
Being
haunted.
in France, I'm sure there's lots of ghosts there.
Well, actually, I lived in a haunted house in Van Nuys. Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah. It was a house that was owned by Buck Jones, the cowboy star, who was
Okay.
killed in the Coconut Grove fire. And all the two other owners were also killed as well. And so occasionally my mother got out of bed and saw this man standing in the middle of the bedroom. And then all of a sudden he vanished, and things like this, And then we had cold spots in the place and all this type of stuff. And one time we had Rock Hudson came over to our house for dinner. And he says, "Oh, I don't believe in ghosts or anything." And then all of a sudden, the whole sugar shaker just went flying off the wall. It went right into ice cream.
Right.
But yeah, interesting. It was interesting experience. Yeah. But you have also you did some work with Robert Zemeckis as well, or?
Well, House on Haunted Hill was produced by Bob,
Hmm.
uh, but also when I did my Crypt episode, he liked it so much that
Mm,
he was going to do a Crypt episode with that was kind of a take on Humphrey Bogart. I don't know if you've seen that one.
mm,
Uh, the Isabella Rossellini and playing her mom, which was pretty interesting. But
mm,
anyway, he asked me to shoot second unit for him,
mm,
and I was happy to do it for him. So I worked with him in that way. And then, of course, actually, years before that, I was in his first movie, I Want to Hold Your Hand,
hmm.
and I wound up playing George Harrison, which was a
Oh
great
yeah.
it was a great treat for me because one morning I wake up and I'm on the Ed Sullivan Show doing "She Loves You."
Oh no. You did some work actually with as a makeup artist for Dan Curtis too, didn't you? Or
I did. I worked with Crazy Dan for a while. Dan was he was a curmudgeon, I guess. He's the only time I've ever actually gotten physically thrown out of an office, and he was just nuts. I mean, I asked him something about Jonathan Frid, and I guess it set him off, and he literally grabbed me and threw me out of his office. So
hmm.
yeah, I worked with him on um, the Norlis tapes, and what was he did a Frankenstein with Bo Svensson. Yeah,
Because I remember he directed or produced a Night Stalker film with
yeah,
Darren
Darren McGavin. Yeah, Night Stalker, which is a great movie.
Yeah, yeah. And that was quite fun. That was yeah.
It's a great. Yeah, Darren McGavin was great. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about these films is that they really need proper restoration because when I saw the last time I saw Night Stalker, apparently there was multiple versions of the show, and nobody bothered to check the soundtrack that went along with it. And at the end of the show, it just starts slipping out of sync, and uh,
Mhm.
the whole last scene, and these people didn't pay any attention to it. That was about 5 frames out of sync.
It's funny how that stuff goes. That stuff makes it into uh, releases that you just go, how did they miss this?
Yeah.
Perfect example was, and this is in the original release of Fatal Attraction.
Mm.
there's a scene where, and this is, I saw this in the theater. Okay, I never saw it again because they must have caught it. But
Mm.
in the theater, when they're first released, there's a scene where she's standing against a blank wall, uh, uh, Glenn Close, and she's there's a telephone and a stand, and that's it. That's all there is. Just her telephone stand and a blank wall behind her, and she's screaming into the phone. Well, literally, this much of a sound guy with the boom, including the mic, was in the shot. You
Oops.
know, and I mean, it's like cut here. This was the edge of frame, and you see like this
Yeah.
much of him with the mic and the boom. You go, how did that pass
Oh
anybody?
no. Yeah, crazy. My God. Yeah. Well, this is the thing too that happened when Spielberg did Duel, because in Duel was intended to be a TV movie only. And then what happened was they decided that they were going to do a cinema version of it because it was so well received. And they went back to the negative and they printed it full frame. The problem was is that he was standing in the area which would normally have been the soundtrack of the picture. So when they reduced the frame size and showed that section, there's a scene with Dennis Weaver driving in with the car, and you see Spielberg standing on the left side of the picture. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of stuff happens, for
Yeah.
sure.
But no, it's an interesting thing that you see in so many movies. Sometimes little things that kind of slip by. Yes. When you were working with Dan Curtis, you just did what was it? I Want to Hold Your Hand in Norliss tapes, or these two projects, or
Well, I Want to Hold Your Hand wasn't Dan Curtis. That was
yeah.
Bob
Okay.
Zemeckis and Spielberg producing.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
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 And my work with Dan Curtis was on the Norliss tapes, and which I did the most work on that. And then his Frankenstein, I just did like design concept design work for him.
Okay.
And um,
So,
uh,
but when you were doing this, it was mainly just makeup work and things like that,
yeah,
or
just makeup
okay.
effects and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was you? Because you were directing on Incredible Hulk Returns too, or
I had nothing to do with that. It's on my IMDb page,
yeah, I was
and it says
wondering about
I'm
that.
some sort of henchman or something like that.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, I was never in it.
I
So
see. Oh, okay.
I've told IMDb that on numerous occasions, but they just said, no, you're in it. Okay,
Oh,
fine.
okay.
So that's it.
And Freddy's Nightmares, is that a TV version of Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah, that was Freddy's Nightmares was a crime time after prime time. I think it ran at like 1 or 2 in the morning or
Oh,
something
I
like
see.
that. It was
Okay.
a Freddy's movie, and that was it was great and it was awful at the same time. The show's awful,
Hmm.
uh, but it was great because the producer didn't care about the show because it ran
Hmm.
at, like I said, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and so I just used it at like film school. I just like tried any wacky ideas I had, and actually I learned a lot of stuff making that show because nobody cared. So I could just like any crazy idea, they'd just go, okay, whatever.
Hmm. Interesting.
So a lot of the stuff turned up later in House on Haunted Hill and some of the other stuff.
Hmm.
I was forever trying to do shots that needed a techno crane, and I'm trying to do it on a dolly. So.
And you directed, was it The Big Easy or?
The Big Easy, yeah, that was a shot down in New Orleans,
Hmm.
and that was great fun to do. I mean, it really was because New Orleans is such a wacky place, and um, yeah, I mean, you'd be filming, and some girl would walk in front of the camera and flash us, and stuff like that.
Oh
I
dear.
remember one. I remember one night coming home from my shoot. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to walk across Bourbon Street, which is a party all the time.
Hmm.
And this girl spots me, and she starts doing a strip and she gets totally naked,
Mm.
around this light pole, and it basically does a pole dance for me. I went,
Mm.
okay, I'm sure the cops are going to show up here soon, but
Yeah.
cool.
Excellent. Well, that was very good. Yeah. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That was it for Disney or a TV show or?
Yeah, I think Disney did it. It was for John Landis was the producer, and I'd known John for some time,
Yeah.
and he asked me to come in and do one,
Hmm.
um, which that was it was fun, but it was kind of weird because the script that they gave me had like exteriors that said like old warehouse district. Well, we were shooting in Calgary, and there's no old the whole place was built up probably in the last 30 years, so there wasn't any old warehouse district. So I was always trying to like figure out how to make this stuff work, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's the first time I ever worked with a one of my favorite cameras of all time, which is the Movie Cam Compact.
Oh, really? Hmm.
Yeah, that is, I think, is the finest motion picture camera ever produced. You
Hmm.
could open the side of it, the 35 millimeter film's running, and it's still silent.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. There were some of these cameras that were around, and then you just don't hear about them anymore. I mean, there was another one. There was Leonetti had a one called the Ultracam
Right,
that they
right.
used for poltergeist. Apparently, it had a reputation for jamming because the
Yeah, I
camera.
think it was unreliable, I think was the issue. Whereas the Movie Cam was a fabulous camera. And in fact, it was so fabulous that Arri finally bought him out and became the
Yeah.
Arri Cam.
Interesting story about Ari was that we had one of the founders of Arnold and Richter, and he was talking about how the military would use the Ari cameras. They would put it onto to a rocket test, and when they would get finished with it, it was designed so that one of the magazines would be parachuted off, and then they would pick it up. And of
Nice.
the actual camera itself was destroyed. And like the guy says, it's great. No customer support.
Yeah, I love Ari. They were very good to me making Parasomnia. So
Yeah. No, they make fantastic cameras. They're really good, you know. And when I lived in Munich, it was, that's their headquarters is right there. And so very often I would go to there. They have a rental facility outside Munich in Ismaning, and that's where they have the Alexa 65 cameras there. And because they don't actually sell those cameras, they only rent them for certain productions and things. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I always thought they should have done like some big deal about the last film camera produced, and they never did it. So that's like a monumental
Yeah.
thing. I always thought, Ari, come on, you should do a little documentary on the last film camera made.
Well, because the last film cameras they made, they were really very, you know, they were really incredibly well engineered. They had, for example, we shot a demo film for Pandora, and we were using an R, I think, what did they call it? The 535, the last one.
Yeah, we used a 535 on fear.com,
Yeah, and
but
it's a wonderful camera. Mhm.
the great camera. The last one, when I shot my film Parasomnia, they lent us the 416
Mm,
and with all the primo lenses.
mm,
So it was great. And the 416 by far is the finest 16 millimeter sound camera ever made, without that doubt. That was just a great camera. I don't know how many they made. I can only imagine not very many.
mm. And then also I saw the 70 millimeter camera that they made, the last one that they produced, and they were using it on Little Buddha, and it had just come back from the shoot, and so it was quite an impressive camera, really enormous thing. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. The other thing too is you made a film called Sleepwalkers.
Yeah, that was a TV show for Spielberg.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, that I'm confusing that with the others. The others was the Spielberg show. That Sleepwalkers was David Goyer.
Oh, David Collier. Yeah.
Yeah, that was his show,
What was
and
it's,
I enjoyed that a lot. That was a very cool experience.
mhm.
I worked with Naomi Watts, and yeah, and it was it. I'm very happy with that show. My episode, uh, the network didn't want to air it because it was too disturbing, and
Mm,
finally they ran out. They actually had to air it because they ran out of material to run. So
mm. Yeah, the others, what was the if is what is the premise
the
of it?
others with the Spielberg show was
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it was kind of hard to explain really what that was about. It was sort of a ghost
Hmm.
show, and I had a lot of weird ghost-like characters in it.
Interesting. Yeah. And one of your recent ones, which is Parasomnia. Yeah. Exactly. What is that? Can you give me some background on that?
Well, Parasomnia was self-financed, which is don't try this at home, kids.
No, I
Uh,
see.
um, which is a project that I just really wanted complete control over because I knew that if I didn't, that it wouldn't turn out the way I wanted it. So I mean, I actually had some studios interested in making it, which probably would have been a better thing for the film because it would have gotten better distribution. But
Mm,
it was shot on Super 16, like I said, with the RE 416,
mm,
and yeah, it's basically about a girl who has a sleeping disorder, and she's like a sleeping beauty, and
mm,
this guy comes and sees her in a hospital, and he slowly becomes sort of enamored with her. And we find out later that they met as little kids, and
mm.
uh, and he was always traumatized by thinking that he somehow killed her because he touched her and she fell over, just because
Oh,
she had the sleeping disorder that if she got overstimulated she would just like pass out.
oh, I see.
So anyway, it's one of the things I'm most proud of because it's
Hmm.
turned out really well. I'm going to do a director's cut release. Now, I said it before that I had complete control, but in fact, I didn't because the original release had distributors that were giving me all kinds of grief about things that they wanted changes and stuff like that. So I
Hmm.
had to oblige them at the time because I had another investor who wanted to see some money coming back
Yeah.
and but I'm going to release a director's cut soon, which is substantially better. And I actually went back and there was some CG in it, which I threw out
Mm.
and replaced with miniatures. So I think it's turned out rather well.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. So a lot of your previous titles, have you thought about doing remastering for things like Blu-ray and
Oh, we remastered House, or no, I mean, Scared to Death, and
mhm.
that actually now looks better than it ever did in the theater. So
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
so that was good.
mm,
I don't know. It's weird when when you get to the point in your life where you've made a movie that needs to be restored. You go,
mhm. Yeah, yeah. It is
"When
kind of funny when you look
restored."
at because I mean it was the thing like my ex-boss who was working for Spielberg and he was involved with the restoration of Jaws. And that was the problem there was because they decided to strike all the prints from the original negative. And what happened was the original negative then got trashed. It was all full of rips and scratches and tears and everything like this because, the usual manhandling in a lab. And when they ended up with like nothing left, it was just, this massive splicing tape and stuff like this. So what they had to do is do a 4K liquid gate scan of the entire movie and then go through and repair the rips and the tears using Inferno, and then
It's
try.
just amazing. It's amazing that they would print off the original original negative.
Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah, but even Spielberg said that what they ended up in the end with was actually better than how it originally looked. And
Yeah,
they fixed a lot of problems. There were a lot of density problems. It was like there's a scene inside the boat with Robert Shaw when they're describing their tattoos back and forth inside before the shark goes and starts plowing into the side of the boat. And there was, if you notice, the density level of the window kept changing all the time. And of course, with color grading, you can fix that, and so they did, and they made it sort of balanced it out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I always thought that maybe John Carpenter should redo Halloween and take out the palm trees.
Yeah. Where are the palm trees? I never noticed that.
Oh, like in the opening shots of the film, it says
Mm.
Hadfield, and off in the corner you can see like palm trees, and you go,
Well, yeah,
"Man,
because isn't the
kind of
house
peaceful to have palm
like
trees."
it's somewhere off Hollywood Boulevard or somewhere near there or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I saw a
And
document
that location is in South Pasadena.
Pasadena. That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. Yeah. But anyhow, yeah, don't forget to, keep us in mind if you decide to do any restoration. We're
Okay.
to help, and do that stuff. Yeah.
Well,
And
good. Yeah. Yeah.
we've take into, if I have to come over there to do it, it's no problem. We can do it over locally in LA area. It's not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully I don't have to restore any more of my movies.
Yeah.
I would hope Warner Brothers is actually pretty good. Like a House on Haunted Hill, I'm not worried about because I don't know if you know this, they have a company policy that they take all of their films,
Mhm.
including ones shot on digital,
Mhm.
and YCMs out of them.
Oh, yeah.
Basically,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
black and white, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's what Kubrick did actually on all his titles as well. And he
Yeah,
set them in a salt mine actually, and so
yeah,
it's still in there. Yeah. And but yeah, no, they've got a very good policy at Warner Brothers, and I spent a week over there training the operators there, and so it
yeah,
was interesting. Yeah, and so it was. They were doing a bunch of different, like we were working on Dial M for Murder and things like that.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and so it's no, it's quite good. Yeah, and so another thing is with your memorabilia that you have, are you going to have any sort of museum or something where you're going to store, where you keep this, or?
No, I just have it in my house really because, like I said, my original intention was to, have like a big display space and,
Mhm.
uh, and of course I've been approached by museums over the years, but they were all like sketchy enough. I don't know if these guys are going to survive, so
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I sort of walked away from it. And and the problem with like the Academy or something like that is they're in a way like the Smithsonian.
Mm.
You Tons of stuff is like put away for decades.
Mm.
Because they don't have the room to display everything, and so you don't want that either. You don't want giving it to somebody who's just like gonna pack it away.
Well,
So
this is it, and this is like with some footage that we were looking for, it goes into a university or something, and it's basically going into a giant hole, you can't get it out afterwards if you want to, or you got to pay for it now. Yeah.
well, yeah, that you don't want that. I mean, it's like there's a movie which I really it's not a very good movie, but it's kind of historically important, which is Mysterious Island,
Oh yeah,
1929.
I know that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and apparently, uh, this is just a rumor, but apparently UCLA has color elements for it.
Mm,
It was originally released in Technicolor,
hmm.
and you know, are we ever going to see that? I don't know.
Well, there's so many films that were shot that had color elements on. There was a movie with Eric von Stroheim that was called The Great Gobbo, in which
Yeah.
he was sort of a ventriloquist. And it was kind of interesting because he controlled the dummy with sort of a squeeze plunger to make this. So he could, do it, control the dummy and sit in the other side of the room, and do it this way. And it looked like the dummy was talking to him. And the last sequence of the picture was in color.
Hmm.
And it got all the color elements were lost, And somebody had a version that was on YouTube. What they had done is they had colorized it. They had tried to make
course, yeah.
something like, but it wasn't really. Yeah.
Well, Mysterious Island was originally released in color. The entire movie was Technicolor,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Mhm.
now supposedly the color elements have been lost, but there's, like I said, some rumor that UCLA actually has them. So
Mhm.
will we ever see that? I don't know.
Yeah. It
I've
was
seen little tiny clips of it in color.
it was like when I did the regrade for Mystery of the Wax Museum. And at that time, the print was in like horrendous condition. And as it was going through the film scanner, you could see the liquid dripping off the film because it was
Yeah,
decomposing. And it was really super slippery going through. And this was the print that they had found in the garage of Jack Warner. And so,
right,
yeah.
right. No, but it's a great restoration, though.
Mm. And what happened was that then the elements went over to UCLA and they spent some time to take all the YCM dirt out and they went through and they retouched everything out frame by frame, and it came out and looks beautiful now. It looks really nice. And the thing about
My favorite of that period is Dr. X, which I love that movie.
exactly, I did Dr. X as well. I did this, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, this funny story about Dr. X was as I was scanning it, I thought, that's strange. The guy's inside in this scene. And then in the next sequence, he's back outside again. And then he's back inside. And I thought, something's not right here. So then I called up MGM and I said, do you have anything on Dr. X? Because I said, I think one of the reels has been swapped. And they sent over this plastic crate with the original shooting script of Dr. X. And
nice.
at that time, the shooting scripts were sort of a ring binders on the top, and then the pages hung underneath, and then you kind of went like this. And
Nice.
I went through it and found out that reel 2B and 3B were the wrong way around.
Yeah.
And put them back in there, and it was like, and I thought, okay, now it makes sense. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's a great looking movie.
yeah. Because the thing is, two color Technicolor has a specific look that it has to, be maintained on it. Somebody tried to do a grade of Wax Museum one time, and they put all this purple into the picture, and it looked terrible. It didn't look like two color Technicolor anymore. It just sort of had this weird thing. And I was talking to a film historian in New York, and he was saying he brought the purple one to my attention. I said, "No, that wasn't me." Yeah.
It's like the old movie This Island Earth, for up until very recently, when they're on Metaluna, suddenly they're, I guess I can imagine the colorists going, "What the hell's wrong with this thing?"
Funny story behind that because there was a gentleman who I knew very well at Universal. His name was Mike Fitzgerald. And Mike, who was the head of home video at Universal at the time, said that they were doing a remastering of This Island Earth. And the sequence inside the room with the monitor on Metaluna, the guy tried to fix the color. This is a major like wrong. No, 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 no. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
always thought, if you're going to do something like a movie like that, you should get a Technicolor print of it and
Well,
A/B it. Just go, okay, let's make it look like that.
exactly, exactly. This is, and what was interesting when I found the other day was that there were copies of Star Wars that were made in dye transfer Technicolor.
Oh yeah, when they first came out, yeah, it
When it
was. I
first
think
came out,
printed
all
in
the
England, I think.
yeah, all the UK release prints for Star Wars were dye transfer Technicolor
Yeah,
with magnetic stripes on it.
yeah. Those
Yeah.
prints are probably worth a fortune.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because I remember when I was working as a projectionist and I ran at one time a deluxe print and it all turned green. And when I opened the cans, it was the smell of bleach just hit you in the face when you open the can. It was terrible. Yes.
yeah, one of the saddest days in my life was I went to get my 35 millimeter IB Tech print of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and
Hmm.
I opened the can and I about fell over from the vinegar syndrome, and I went, oh
Yeah,
no.
because the problem is, and this is what I was talking to these people about with the mag tracks for this project I'm working on now, is I said, it seems to be that vinegar syndrome is activated by acetate together with the magnetic track, with the oxide on it.
Mhm.
And eventually what happens is, especially with Magstripe 35 prints, it warps them so bad that they almost won't even go through the projector. And then
Yeah,
also what happens too is that eventually the track will fall off and then you don't have anything. And
yeah,
this happened to me. I was working on a film, a Josh Logan movie called Sayonara. And with this one, I opened the can and it was just a roll of backing and this pile of ashes inside, which was the oxide that was all lining the bottom of the can. And I remember I was talking to, at that time, Tom Bodley from Goldwyn, and I said, Tommy, you got anything else? And they had a TV version, and I managed to pinch the audio from the TV version, and that worked.
yeah. When we restored Scared to Death,
Hmm.
Scared to Death was shot on 16,
Hmm.
and because it was 16, it was AB rolled. And for
Hmm.
those who don't know what AB rolls is, means it was 16 millimeter. They couldn't really do opticals like between fades and dissolves, so they'd make uh, film prints that went like, or negatives actually that went. They took the camera original negative, and they would cut it on two rolls, and so one would have an image here, and the next scene would be here, and the next scene would be here, and that was called AB rolls. Well, when we opened the box, when I put the reels up on some rewinds, I looked at the film and it looked like it had been dragged through the dirt, and I
Hmm.
said, and I think to myself, how could that happen? I've had this negative all these years and I've never done anything with it. Turns
Hmm.
out the black backing between the on the AB rolls had all fallen off and just made a mess of the film. It
Yeah,
took quite a
this
lot
is
to get that off.
and this has always been a problem. I remember I did the remastering for The Graduate, and that had a different type of negative. They had what they call a function negative. And this was a negative that had this sort of like chunks of film that was spliced in to trigger opticals and things like this. And you couldn't use this for a telecine because of, you know, there was nothing to do with that stuff. And of course, it would in no way synchronize with the picture. And finally, I had to tell the guys, I said, listen, you got to find something else because this isn't going to work. So we had to look for an IP and then we worked for that. And that was okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Some of those things that you thought at the time was a good idea wasn't.
yeah, I mean, for example, it was strange because well, like when I did the mastering for The Little Mermaid for Disney, and that was 35, but they did AB rolls on it for some unknown reason. Why they would do a 35 AB roll on it, I don't know. Yeah. Mhm.
Well, actually, I always thought that 35 should have been AB rolled because,
Yeah.
then you don't have those awful opticals where it suddenly pops in, you do a dissolve and suddenly go, you know.
Well, this is the thing too, is that certain studios had different ways of doing opticals. MGM would just kind of plop it in the middle of a shot when an optical would go through. And then you
Yeah.
sort of match the size and the structure and everything and make it so it fit together. Certain movies, it was better than others. Forbidden Planet was pretty easy to do. Other films, it was far more difficult. And but studios like Fox, they would bring the optical in at the scene change and then take it across that way. And that worked out much better. Yeah. Yeah. But it was talking about, your Super 16, which is interesting, is that it used to be in the past when you would do release prints from Super 16, you'd have to do an optical blow up. And I
Right.
worked on a picture where we did the first, what we call digital blow up, whereby the 16 millimeter rushes were all scanned into a digital format. they did the final edit and then put it together. And then actually it was then shot out to 4 per 35 using an RE laser, and that worked out really, yeah.
My film Fear.com was actually the second movie ever to do a digital release,
Hmm.
the digital to film.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, the first one being Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah. Hmm.
And I remember that when we released the film, the insurance company said, "Well, no, you got to cut the negative." And I went, "Why?" They said, "Because this is voodoo technology." I went, "Really?" Okay.
It was like we were discussing the other day about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, was that there were that film was made when CinemaScope was first developed. And so what happened was Fox gave Disney one set of lenses for the movie. So when they went to the
Hold that thought. I'll be right back.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Okay.
There's the lens that shot 20,000 Leagues Under the
Oh,
Sea. Here's one of them.
yeah. So is that a Bausch and Lomb or is that
It
the?
is Bausch and Lomb, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it must have been one of their very early ones because the ones that they used for the robe were the original brass ones that Henri Chrétien.
If
Uh,
you watch, yeah, if you watch 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, like behind the scenes, you'll see this lens.
you really, yeah.
Now, the problem with these is you had to have two focus pullers.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
You had to have one guy focusing the main lens and then another person focusing this
Yeah.
right here.
Because what they fixed on the Bausch and Lomb lenses, yeah, on the Bausch and Lomb lenses, they fixed the linearity for scope. Because the first ones for the robe, it people on the left sides of the picture weren't as squeezed as the ones from the center all the way across.
If you look, even the modern ones do that.
Really?
If you
Yeah.
really look at the edges, you'll see it's called barrel distortion, which is, you
Hmm.
know, like you said, the people on the edge of the frame will be tall and skinny, and
Yeah.
then as it gets closer to the middle, they look normal.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
and this lens does that in spades.
Yeah, because if you look there's a scene in 20,000 where they've got James Mason in full frame, and you see him actually sort of being stretched in the picture.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
other,
when they pull focus, you'll see,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
CinemaScope is not. I mean, it's great, but it's really not a perfect optical system
well,
by
yeah.
any stretch. Yeah, these are really interesting lenses. This one actually, this mount here was made for me because I used it on Fear.com, and
Uh-huh.
they added a thing here so I can rotate the lens.
Hmm. Well, actually, the smaller versions of the CinemaScope lenses, because Henri Chrétien, the developer, kept the right to use it on the smaller formats, and it's
Hmm.
hypergonar.
Uh-huh.
And the hypergonar lenses, you can still get them for like 16 millimeter and things like that. Yeah.
Right.
It was originally developed for I think it was for a expo in Paris during that time, and then it was George Spyro I think his name was. He was the one who went to Paris to go and sign off on it that they were going to buy the rights to it. Yeah.
I love inventions that are like invented and then people don't know what to do with it for years.
Mm.
Yeah, the zipper was that way. It was invented 75 years before anybody actually used it for anything.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, wonderful. Well, I think I don't want to keep you too long. I think we've been talking for almost an hour here, actually.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, and so I just want to, I don't want to, monopolize your time too much there.
Well, I've
And
had a great time, and hope I, answered some of your questions. And
pleasure. Yeah, thank you. No, it was wonderful. I really super enjoyed it. Yeah.